Welcome back to another edition of the Talking National League podcast. We are on episode 2 tonight. Now, it's going to be a busy schedule tonight. We're going to be speaking to a Dorking fan and a York City fan on their promotions to the Vanarama National League. We'll also be taking a deep dive into Notts County's new appointment with the appointment of Luke Williams, who's become the Notts County manager, before later going on to looking at some of the latest odds. Who are the favourites to get promoted and who are the favourites to get relegated? Like he did last week, I've brought on Colin, who works for Analyst Bar. He's a Notts County fan, so good to bring you on with all the latest news surrounding Notts at the minute. But yeah, thanks for coming on tonight, Colin.
No worries, mate. Thanks for having me.
As always, at Non-League Bible have partnered with the podcast for this week's episode. I would really appreciate it if all of you viewers could go over there and drop him a follow on Instagram, Twitter or Facebook. And once again, a big thank you to at Non-League Bible for partnering with the channel. So, yeah, it's been a busy week, hasn't it, with transfers. We are going to be going on to talking about some of the promoted clubs, looking at some of the latest odds. But firstly, so we go through some of the latest transfers.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think one of the standout features really is the amount of strikers on the move. We were just talking before we went on air about kind of clubs really trying to make sure that they get their forward lines right. And obviously that's one of the standout features, isn't it, about the clubs that get out of National League, is making sure that their strikers are firing on all cylinders. So it's quite interesting to see, some of the players on the move, and obviously our two clubs affected with big name signings, going out the window, and obviously we're hoping that those strike forces get replaced and we go again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, let's quickly talk about some of the transfers then.
Yeah, you've got Matt Lowe coming from Brackley and moving into Accrington, and I think again, even though that's obviously moving into the EFL, I think it's important for us to understand, the importance of the National League. This is an opportunity for players to come in, to make an impact, to make a difference, and to be able to kind of move on as well. So that's a good move for them, and I think it also gives those confidence. Thinking about those players who are playing probably under 23 level, who've been released from certain clubs. I mean, one player that stands out to me who's been released from Newcastle is a player called Tom Allen, who might end up in the National League. Who knows? And like I say, maybe he'll be looking for that same sort of trajectory. And then obviously a move very close to my heart really is Kyle Wootton, who I remember us talking about it last week. Is it probably going to happen? But obviously he's moved to Stockport now. Good luck to him. Like I say, really good target man, but also really good with his feet. So it'll be interesting to see how he goes. I'll leave the conversation about Bailey Waters up to you. How would you summarise that move?
Oh, yeah. To be honest, it's a good move for him when you think of Billy Waters. I personally felt he could have probably gone on to do better. That's no disrespect to Barrow whatsoever. They are in the Football League. They have a right to nick players off National League clubs. But when I looked at Billy Waters' form last season, I thought he could have potentially got a bigger move than Barrow in the Football League. But yeah, good luck to him. Pete Wild, we talked about this a bit last week. He's obviously gone to Barrow. They seem to be doing a lot of business in the Football League. Keeping the same conversation with Halifax Town, another player out of the door is former captain Niall Marr. He's gone to the Mariners in the Football League. Obviously, they got promoted earlier on in the season via the playoffs. Good luck to him. It's a solid signing for Grimsby, that. But there's also been a few other transfers as well surrounding the Vanarama National League. Another one that I'd like to add is Amari Little leaving Torquay United to go and play in League One for Forest Green. Obviously, Ian Birchall, he also went to Forest Green too. But yeah, are there any more transfers you'd like to talk about?
Well, I think, we've talked about young, promising players going forward and moving into the AFL, but obviously we've got Chris Porter as well, who's coming at Oldham. So a really sort of experienced striker as well. And it's interesting to see, how clubs are going about fixing those things. Obviously, Notts have got Macaulay Longstaff, for example, who's come in from the National League North and coming to Notts to fill that gap that Wootton, has created. But also, some clubs looking at really bringing in that experience, that EFL experience, and really trying to make sure it counts in the National League. So it'd be interesting to see which type of transfer policy pays off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with that. Halifax have also brought in their first player as well, bringing in Hunter, who joins from Gateshead. Obviously, he had quite a lot of respect at Gateshead United too. Yeah, good move for him coming to Halifax. I'm happy to see him. He seems to be a replacement for Martin Woods too. Any more transfers you'd like to add?
Well, I think just a club to pay particular attention to. I remember us talking last week is Southend and looking at the business they're doing. I think they were last season a little bit of kind of turnover, and they used a lot of kind of loan signings. Whereas now they're really starting to make some solid movements and recruitments. And I think, to be honest with you, I think, and I know you're going to talk about odds later on, but there may be a club to keep an eye on, certainly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd agree with that. Notts County have done the business as well, bringing in a striker in Langstaff. He obviously left last week. What do you think he could bring to the team?
I think he's going to help us attack in a slightly different way. So with Wootton, you were used to a traditional target man who played high up the pitch, but back to the goal and sort of link play up. And it was interesting that, in the sort of press around his Stockport move, he was talking about the lack of direct balls into him and how he was hoping to receive a few more of those, which I think was slightly unfair on Notts, to be honest. But I think it's probably the type of things that you say when you join a new club, don't you? And you want to talk about how it's all going to be better. But I think we're going to have to attack in a slightly different way. I think Langstaff prefers balls in front of him. And sort of like making sure that he runs onto it. I think that's his strength. We've obviously got players like Ruben Rodriguez who can really play that link up. But also I think we might be missing another midfielder who can probably sort of thread those balls through the line. So it'll be interesting what other types of recruitment we do around that move. But obviously delighted to get a proven striker in.
Mm-hmm. Moving on to another transfer now, back to Torquay United. Conor Leigh-Evans, he's left the club to go and join Stockport County in the Football League. Torquay seemed to be a side that struggled to keep hold of players at the end of the season. We saw in the previous season the loss of like the likes of Ben Whitfield, Kyle Cameron, who went to Notts County. They do seem to struggle to keep hold of players. Some of the rumours now that have surrounded the Vanarama National League, two particularly that I'd like to focus in, is Michael Giassi. He's set to join Chesterfield in the upcoming days. Halifax are another side that have been rumoured with him. What would your thoughts be on that? Obviously, there's the one standout game against Wrexham last season where he scored 4 goals. Think he'd be a good fit for Chesterfield?
Yeah, and again, I think Chesterfield have struggled to kind of really solve the gap to Shamanga, for example, and really trying to make sure that they find another source of goals. And obviously, they're trying to recruit that in. I was surprised about where Chesterfield ended up and felt incredibly sorry for them because they've started at an absolute gallop, didn't they? Which I think is, again, another warning about the National League. The club that always starts off the strongest doesn't always be the one that ends up, and it only takes a fine margin, doesn't it, to change things. But really good piece of business. And I know that they've had a lot of turnover and stuff, but you would expect that recruitment team is still in the building that was unable to kind of bring in quality players. I know that they've put a few players on the transfer list as well, in order to try and freshen the squad up. So it'd be interesting to see what they look like. It's getting closer to kick-off, certainly.
Mm-hmm. Another rumour surrounding the Vanarama National League is Jesse Deborah to Huddersfield Town. Now, there's been a lot of increased media attention within Jesse Deborah coming from some national news sources, including The Sun. A statement that did come out a couple of days ago was when Halifax, on the official club site, they announced that they're not expecting Jesse Deborah to be departing from FC Halifax Town this season, which is very positive news for us. A solid centre-back last season, young, hungry, got the pace, got the physicality to be a quality centre-back, and I'm sure one day he will get his move to the Football League. However, there are still rumours going around suggesting that Jesse Deborah is still going to go and join Huddersfield Town. But for me personally, hopefully, they're all not real. So, yeah, I think that more or less wraps it up for transfers and stuff like that. So I think we'll move on to the big thing, why I've personally brought you on tonight, Colin. Luke Williams appointed as the new Notts County manager. Now, I'll allow you to talk a bit about this with you being a Notts County fan yourself.
Well, it's been quite the journey for any Notts fans listening. We've had, I'll just give you a brief summary. We've had a Scandinavian manager rumoured and was leading the betting who had recently left the post in the Faroe Isles, which turned out to be someone just doing a really good Google search and putting a few quid on and messing about with the betting odds. We've had a 21-year-old university student, I think it was, where his mates just put a few bit of money on it and convinced the Bet Victor, I think it was, that they'd unearthed a talented manager, and he shot to prominence for a bit and ended up in the national news. So it's been quite a journey, to be honest. So to settle with someone with quite strong credibility like Luke Williams is obviously a relief after a bit of the journey that we've been on. But I can understand the logic in the recruitment, and I think that's reassuring. I remember saying to you previously, Notts as a club before the previous owners lurched from one strategy to another, one type of play to another, one type of recruitment to another. So this does feel like a natural fit. And one of the things that came out loud and clear with Luke Williams in the press is that he wanted to build on the style of play that Ian Birchnell had done, and obviously was high praise for that. So that's reassuring in most senses, that we're not going to make a massive change. However, I'm sure that there were a lot of Notts fans as well that are hoping that he kind of plugs the gaps that were fairly typical of an Ian Birchnell Notts County side, this sort of attacking approach that sometimes left us a little bit exposed defensively, and we struggled to kind of press teams intelligently and win the ball back early. So we're also hoping that he's able to kind of bring in and tap in that experience that he's gained at coaching at a high level, certainly, and being able to kind of bring that in and plug some of those gaps and hopefully turn Notts into the side that we all hope, we want them to be.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And when I think of Luke Williams as a head coach, now head coach is something I'd like to pick out there, it does mean that all the transfer business is probably going to be within the board at Notts County. And that seems to have been the case for the past couple of seasons. You look at the recruitment they've brought in, they were doing recruitment before they even had a manager, which suggests what Notts County's movement are heading forward. And I think, I want to ask you this, do you think this could be a positive influence that you've got a head coach that stays away from the business side of the club?
I'll be honest, yeah, and I can understand a lot of fans disagreeing with that. But my concern is this: that when you eventually find a manager, and Notts have had a few as well as other clubs, that really does turn a club around, when they leave, they tend to take away that blueprint of success, and they tend to take away, whoever was doing the scouting, whoever was doing the coaching, whatever worked. And clubs really struggle to fill those gaps and fill those voids. So I think if you've got a structure in place, so you've got your recruitment team, you've got your coaching team, and you're just bringing in one or two people to kind of head that up and move that forward, for me, that's slightly more reassuring. But I understand how stressful that is for fans. I mean, you've got to just think about Nottingham itself. And I know we're not unique in this in terms of having the likes of Brian Clough over at Forest and what he did. We had Jimmy Cyril. We've got a stand named after him. We've got a statue outside the ground. That really shows you how successful managers are being brought to clubs' hearts. But at the same time, I do think, I think about the times when, all right, I wasn't alive, I wasn't around with the Jimmy Cyril era, but when Neil Warnock left us, for example, the club really struggled. He was the one that really brought the success in, and we never really kind of recovered that. Then we had people like Sam Allardyce come in again, turn the club around, but then again left, and we never really were able to maintain that progress. And we've had plenty of others since. So for me, I'm really reassured with the idea of bringing in a head coach, bringing in an assistant, allowing him to have people that he's chosen, but ultimately he's tapping into the resources that are already there. And if we had to, it's only going to end two ways, isn't it? He's either going to get sacked or he's going to go and leave us for a bigger and better club at some point down the line. I'd much rather have, 2/3 of the things that made him successful, say, still in the building, and then, you build on that, don't you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's some big names in managers in there that you've mentioned, the likes of Sam Allardyce, Neil Warnock. I think there's always high expectations of a manager when they do come into Notts County. We've seen the likes of Neil Ardley, an experienced manager at Vanarama National League level, did a good job at Notts County, taking them to a playoff final. And that wasn't enough for him to stay on as the manager later on in the season. He did, unfortunately, get sacked. And the likes of Ian Birchall as well, he's come to the club and later departed from the club to play basically Football League football and manage Football League football. So I think it shows that if this Luke Williams is committed, like the Neil Ardleys was, like you've had in the past with the likes of Sam Allardyce, Neil Warnock, it could be a long-term and a very influential plan, wouldn't you agree?
I'd agree completely. And I mean, I know contracts in football don't mean an awful lot. I mean, I think Ian Birchall signed a 4-year deal and obviously left within a year of it, but he's been signed to a 3-year deal, and obviously there is a plan to move the club forward eventually, and they obviously see him as the idea to go that forward. And again, that stability and that reassurance is really important. You want to go to your team. Obviously, football's an unpredictable sport anyway. The last thing you want is unpredictability around who's going to be the manager and who's going to be, organising the things Monday to Friday. So for me, yeah, it's an ambitious move, and it's good to tie someone down who, if you look at social media, was praised by a lot of former players. And that's reassuring that he's obviously got those positive relationships with most of the players that he's coached. He also brings with him a familiar sort of tactical shape. So again, he's I'm linking back to the time at Swindon, because it's really hard, obviously, to think about any other of the kind of the solid bases, because when you're an assistant manager, you're sometimes doing what the manager or the head coach wants, don't you? But like, he's often used shapes like 3-5-2 and 3-4-3, which, if you look at the recruitment that we've done so far in the squad we've got left, it all kind of fits in. So again, I agree with you completely about this idea about building towards the future. It feels like we are putting a few more blocks in place, but obviously, ultimately, it comes down to performances on the pitch, doesn't it?
Sounds like the sort of coach that will suit the kind of football that Notts County do like to play when in possession and out of possession. Now, before we do go on to talking a bit about the odds, and we bring on the York City interview and the Dorking interview, I just quickly like to go through the key dates that have been announced over the week about the National League, when the fixtures will be announced, when some of the key dates within playoffs next season. Obviously, it's a long way away for both of our clubs, with playoffs just basically being over now. I'd quickly just like to talk a bit about these. So the opening day of the season will be Saturday, the 6th of August. The fixtures will be released on Wednesday, the 6th of July. Some of the key dates for the Vanarama National League playoffs: the first eliminator, which is what Notts and Grimsby played in earlier on within the playoff campaign, will commence on Tuesday, the 2nd of May, 2023. Wednesday, the 3rd of May, will be the Eliminator B, which is what, unfortunately, Halifax got knocked out of to Chesterfield. The semi-final game will be Sunday, the 7th of May, and the second semi-final will be Sunday, the 7th of May, sorry. So both of them semi-finals are on the 7th of May. So that's interesting, knowing that both semi-finals will commence on the same day. And then the promotion final will be Saturday, the 13th of May. So they're all the key dates for listeners that you'll be wanting to keep an eye on. Remember, fixtures will be announced on the 7th of July. In a couple of weeks or so. So yeah, I'd like to go through some of the latest odds within the National League. Obviously, these did come out last week. I've got them up here. I forgot to put them on last week, so we'll talk a bit about them tonight. So I think this is the first section that I saw. You've got Eastleigh, Maidenhead and Altrincham and Wealdstone. These are to win the league. You look at these sort of sides. Altringham's one that surprises me the most, I'll agree, Colin, because these are the bottom four predicted for relegation as well. When you think of Altrincham, you think of them going full time and signings that they've made. 151. Would you say that's fair for them?
Yeah, I must admit, looking at that, I was a little bit shocked to find their name in there, particularly when you consider how kind of progressive they are. And obviously, as you absolutely said, going full time and seemingly sort of going for it, or certainly having the confidence to go for it. So those odds seem incredibly long, don't they? But I think also it's about looking at recruitment as well and thinking about the business that might happen. So there might be some interesting little odds for people listening and watching to have a go at, really, because particularly Altrincham stands out to me as an interesting one.
Yeah, and you look at Maidenhead as well. I think when you look at favourites to get relegated, I think Maidenhead are the favourites to get relegated, and that also surprises me. Moving on to some of the other ones going on now. These are the next section. You've got York, Gateshead, Woking, Barnet, Dorking, Maidstone and Aldershot. I don't think too many of them surprise me with them odds. I think you look at a side like York, 50-1. Would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, like I say, I think it's about momentum, isn't it, going forward, and how well those clubs that get promoted can build on that momentum and really push on, and how much they can keep their unit together. I mean, we've talked about some moves coming out of Gateshead at the moment, but it's certainly listening to their manager on their YouTube channel quite recently, talking about kind of how he feels that things are going to stabilise now. They're looking positive in terms of the recruitment, which I know is the typical things that managers say. But, maybe Gateshead, they've seen quite long odds for a side that did incredibly well last season. And like I say, if they can keep the rest of the core side together and build on it, who knows what can happen.
Mm-hmm. What surprises me there is the fact that Aldershot are in the bottom four. You look at the recruitment that they've done early on. I won't obviously announce my predictions now, but Aldershot, you look at the odds and you think of how poor they've been last season, for the last couple of seasons, I would say. I think I'd probably put them in the bottom four based on odds.
Yeah, I mean, I can understand. I mean, they gave us a torrid game when Notts away from home, so they have got potential to upset a few people. But I also agree as well. I think you never really knew, the type of Aldershot that was going to turn up. You know what I mean? They gave some really great performances, but there was also some really poor ones as well. And I think if they can build consistency into their game, and that starts right from the management team all the way through. If they can keep that consistency going and keep that focus, then they might survive. But like I say, if they start to change things around too much, if we start to see, a managerial departure, for example, those sorts of things, that's when a club starts to struggle, and we might start to see, what you're saying, realised, particularly about a threat of relegation.
We usually see with the National League sides like Dorking, when they get promoted, that they are underestimated. Here, we haven't particularly seen that. 66-1 for them to win the league title. They've done quite a lot of early on business. I think the second highest National League South top goal scorer last season, alongside Alfie Rusherford, who's stayed with the club. I think this is one thing that I will compliment the betting service on. That they have put Dorking for 66-1, because I think a lot of people would expect Dorking to be in that bottom four just purely based on where they've come from.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. And I think, and I don't mean any criticism. I know we're going to talk about these clubs later on, but the clubs that have come down aren't probably of the same pulling power unless something dramatic happens from now until, the start of the season in terms financially. They're not going to, rip up the trees like we saw with Stockport, for example. I mean, I know Grimsby had a big turnover of squad as well. So maybe that's what the betting odds reflect, is that, the clubs going down are not necessarily going to flex their financial muscles. And so possibly your likes of Dorking and Gateshead and York might have some really good seasons on the back of that.
Mm-hmm. The next load, I'll quickly just go through them. I think that's the top. Apologies. These are the next section. Dagenham are 20-1. Halifax are 25-1. Oldham are 25-1. Yeovil are 25-1. Torquay are 25-1. And Scunthorpe are 33-1. What are your thoughts on them?
Torquay, I think, are going to be an interesting one as well, because we've talked about the transfer activity and the players out, etc. at Torquay, and how year on year they have to do a really hard job in terms of replacing some key significant players. But they seem to do it kind of year on year, and I seem to remember them having quite a strong finish to the season just gone. So it might be interesting to see how, if they've learned from that, if they've learned how to replace those key figures and to build upon that. So that might be an interesting one to watch. I was going to ask you about Halifax as well. How do you feel about those odds?
It's quite hard to say. You look at the players that we've lost. Billy Waters, probably the most significant for me. No discredit to the other two centre halves who've left now, man. Tom Bradbury. I think the big thing is to see how the assistant manager does now. Obviously, work behind the scenes at Halifax Town. Pete Wild took the majority of the credit, but I think Millington deserves some of the credit for the success we've had over the past couple of seasons. To be honest, if I wasn't a Halifax fan, I would probably agree with those. You look at, we've kept the majority of the squad. We've lost a few influential players. But yeah, I think that's fair, personally, for me. Moving on to I think this is the top 7 predictions. Yeah, these are favourites to finish within the playoffs. And obviously, as we all expected, Wrexham are the favourites to win. What are your thoughts on these?
Yeah, I think everyone's backing Wrexham, aren't they? And I'm sure there's probably some Wrexham fans wishing that we don't, because they were strong favourites as well in the season just gone. But, you can't, you just look at that squad and you look at the quality of it and you look at the experience. And if they can galvanise themselves and use that to go forward, then, I think they're everybody's favourites, aren't they? I'm breaking out into a bit of a cold sweat to see not sort of second favourite here, not because I haven't got, faith in them. Obviously, as a fan, you always have faith in them. But, I think there's a lot of questions to be answered around Notts, in terms of very significant players' futures. We're talking Ruben Rodriguez, Cal Roberts, obviously Kyle Watson's future being sorted. But I think there are, like I say, obviously you bring in a new head coach and stuff. It is a season of change, and it's how well I think we can hit the ground running. And then like I say, you've got the likes of Chesterfield, who again I felt incredibly sorry for, how they tailed off and the reasons for them tailing off. It's interesting to find Solihull, sort of fourth in those odds when you consider just how close they got to promotion.
Yeah, and they've kept the majority of the squad too. Solihull, Sabara, and Dallas still at the club, and this is now at this moment in time. There's still a long time until that transfer window does close, but yeah, surprising to see those two stay. Obviously, that could change. And the only big rumour has been Carl Hudlin, who's rumoured with Huddersfield.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the trend at the moment, isn't it? Is we're mainly looking at players leaving the National League to go into the EFL, and I think it's going to be interesting to see how these National League clubs respond. And again, I think that could have a really big impact on the market. But let's face it, the club that's probably going to be resistant to that is Wrexham, which is why they're top of the betting odds.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd agree with that. And I think one that surprises me would probably be Bournemouth. You look at a side like Dagenham, who we were talking a bit about earlier, and you look at the size of them, how good their investment can be at times. I'm surprised they're not within this top 7 list.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I've got a lot of respect for Boreham Wood and what's being done there and the work that's been done there. They're a difficult unit to break down and beat. And obviously the bookies, believe that they're going to be able to kind of build upon that. But you're absolutely right. I think when you look at Dagenham, Redbridge, and those sort of clubs who attack incredibly well, easy on the eye, I'm surprised that they're not in there. But like I say, again, this is all kind of subject to change, isn't it? With you only need 2 or 3 smart acquisitions, and I can imagine those odds tumbling quite quickly. And like I say, I focus on Southend particularly when I say that, because I think they've recruited quite well so far. I think they've recruited quite well at the early part of the year, sort of January time. So I think those odds now are quite good, and they could easily diminish if they bring in a few more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree with that. The likes of Dan Mooney leaving from Altrincham, I think Southend could be strong next season. That wraps up the betting odds then. We're going to be looking at some of the videos now that I've recorded earlier on in the week with York City fan Ryan Brook, and then going on to talk to the Dorking fan about Dorking Wanderers next season. Colin, I do really appreciate you coming on tonight. And yeah, I'll see you next time.
No problem. Thanks ever so much. Catch you again.
See ya. So that wraps it up now, talking about the odds. And you probably won't be hearing me live for a little while now, with quite a lot of videos to play tonight. Apologies if the internet quality isn't at the standard. This is something I'm new that I'm trying out. Hopefully, I think it will get better within the interview as we go further into the interview. But the first one I'm going to be bringing on tonight is an interview I caught up with Ryan Brook earlier on in the week to talk about York City's hopes heading into the 22-23 season. So the rise of York City, they are finally back in the Vanarama National League. I've brought on Ryan Brook tonight, who works for Jorvik Radio and is a big York City supporter. So I think congratulations are in order, firstly, Ryan. How's that promotion season been?
I think after the few years that we've gone through lately, I think it's what the club and the fans deserve. Well, having a look at the previous seasons, we're relegated in 2016-17. 2018-19, we finished around 11th, 12th position. 2020, we finished top and didn't get promoted because of points per game. Mm-hmm. And then, obviously, the other season got null and voided. And then to end it on promotion like this and get back to the National League, I think it's what all fans were waiting for, and it's really boosted morale.
Mm-hmm. Yes, certainly. Do just short of 30 points behind Gateshead last season, 28 to be exact, I believe. That's quite a huge distance when you think of where York finished. They respectively finished 5th, but they still managed to get promotion, still 28 points behind Gateshead. Was it a bit of a shock for you, for York, to get promoted through the playoffs?
Well, kind of, yeah. For many fans, I think it was towards the back end of January, we were miles off the playoffs. I think we were sitting around 13th or something, and fans were sort of saying that's our season over now. But I had a little bit of hope, and when there was a defeat against Bradford, we lost 3-0 on Tuesday night.
Yeah.
And then after that game, we went on a 12-game unbeaten streak, which was really good, including reaching the semi-finals of the FA Trophy, and that's what turned our season around, I think. And at one point, I mean, it was we had to make it playoffs out of absolutely nothing, and somehow we've done it under John Askey coming into the club.
Yeah.
But I'm sorry.
No, carry on. Sorry.
All right. Last day of the season, it was between us and Troy to get 5th place, which meant we got a home draw, obviously, and we did that. And I think that's really helps get up because 2 or 3 away games, I don't think we could have gone through all of them and got up through that. So I'm just glad we got the right route to promotion and we've done it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, certainly. Like when you look at York as a club, some probably even say they shouldn't be at the National League level. I think there's a lot of people that see York as a sleeping giant within the football system. You look at York as a place, it's highly populated. You're getting 4,000 at home, which is incredible for National League North standard. Who knows what crowds you're going to be getting this season. Do you feel that long term you're going to be wanting to try get back into the Football League and progress like a Stockport has or a Lincoln City has?
Yeah, I think that's got to be the main aim, hasn't it? John Ashley's come in and he wanted to take us up a level, and I think he's going to want to take us up another level, and that's what the fans want. The fans want to see us back in the Football League. I think fans of other clubs are even saying we should be in the Football League, but we are where we are, and we've just got to make our way out of it because 2 relegations. It wasn't looking good at one point, but you've got to look at where we are and think we're here. We've got to do what we can, and can't change that, can we, at the moment? So we've just got to get back in the Football League.
Yeah, I think that's the same for a lot of clubs like Halifax ourselves. What was that experience like for you, dropping down as far as the National League North from ultimately the Football League? I'm guessing it wasn't a pleasant experience.
It was dreadful. The first relegation, we could sort of take it because we thought we were going to go straight back up again. But, well, at least try to. But then we got in a relegation battle. I was thinking, how the hell's this happened? And one of the results in that season, we lost 6-1 to Guiseley, I'm sure. Which that was one of the lowest of the lows at that point. Well, before we got into National League North, on the last day of the season, we played Forest Green, and that was to stay up. Ended 2-2, and we went down because Solihull conceded a 90th minute equaliser against Guiseley, which sort of sent us down, and the silence, the deathly silence at full time in that game. You could hear a pin drop. It was awful.
It's just demotivating, isn't it? And it goes flat. You basically deflate when you've had relegation. I remember guys in Nowley surviving relegation when Halifax went down into National League North. It's quite surprising and quite a bit of a shock and quite scary as a York City fan to think that you've spent over, I think, is it 5 seasons you've spent in the National League North now, which is phenomenal, isn't it? The fact that you've been in that division for so long when you look at York City as a side. So I quickly want to talk a bit about the return list. What's the news been surrounding the squad with York City at this moment in time? Players coming in, players coming out. We will go on to players coming in a short while, but firstly, who's left the club?
Well, there's not much to talk about players coming in. Obviously, a lot of players have left, as I think most fans would have expected, with us moving up a level, and we've got to get the right players to play for us in National League. But some of the players that we did retain, I've got them here: Scott Barrow, Ollie Dyson, Maz Kuya, Maxim Coogan, some of them, Paddy McLaughlin, even Ackle Wright, and there's loads of them that are yet to sign a contract. In fact, none of them have signed a contract yet. So we're just waiting. We're just waiting on that at the moment, and hopefully, I think Askey's come back off holiday this week, and we've got under a month now till pre-season starts. So we need to get signing players quickly, but I've got faith in him, and I think we've got some key players that we really need to keep, and there's some players that we need to sign as well. Obviously, Scott Bowden, the only player in our ranks at the moment, and he's a decent player, but I don't think he can play every single position, can he? So
he's an out-and-out striker. We've always seen he's played for Halifax in the past, Chesterfield, Bournemouth. He can be a clinical goal scorer. It just depends on the position that you're playing him.
And also Pete Jameson. That was a massive blow, him leaving the club for Harrogate Town Football League. I mean, it's a Football League opportunity for him. I mean, you can't really turn it down, can you? But it's just a shame that he's left us, because I think it was expected that he had to make a decision, and he's obviously made the right decision for him. But for the club, what position are we left in now? Because we've only got one keeper, well, yet to sign, Ryan Whitley. He's been at the club for quite a few years now, and yet to have his actual breakthrough in this first team. He's played a few games, but with Pete Jameson leaving, I think this might be his season. And if he doesn't get the first team spot this season, he's got to move on elsewhere, because he's 21, 22 years old, I'm sure, and this is make or break time now.
I just want to talk about some of the players that have obviously left York City. Clayton Donaldson previously had Football League experience at the likes of Bradford. Was that sort of a blow for you when you knew that York weren't going to retain someone of the standard of Clayton Donaldson, or do you think that his age, his ability had gone and couldn't cope with the National League as what it is today?
Well, it's hard to say much on that, because he's 38 years old, isn't he? And with the experience he has, he's done phenomenal for us this season. Putting all that into consideration, he's finished top scorer, and I think he bagged quite a few assists as well. But it is a shame we've not kept him. But he wants to keep playing for another few years, and I don't know if that would have worked out at York City with us getting promoted a level. Would he have been able to cope with another season in that league? But as I said, he just wanted to keep playing for another couple of years, and I don't see why he shouldn't, because he's still got the quality of a Football League player, and he's class. But also, Kurt Willoughby, I take it you've heard of him leaving as well. He finished in the top 3 scorers, I'm sure. That was another kind of blow. But you've got to get rid of this. You've got to get rid of a lot of players once again, and that's what Askey's done with Willoughby. And now we're left with no strikers. Well, apart from Scott Bowden, obviously, who's trying.
I'm sure he'll bring in more players too to add to the depth within the York City squad. Matty Brown, I don't know what your opinions were on him as a player. I know at Halifax he was a fan favourite, played quite a lot for a number of seasons with the club. A traditional old-fashioned centre-half, isn't he, Matty Brown? Michael Duckworth, also a former FC Halifax Town player. Have these players, how have these fitted into the plans over the last couple of seasons, and why do you think it is that they were released?
Matty Brown, he's been captain for most of the season. I watched your interview with him the other day, actually. Good. He's a great guy. But his job was to take us up to the National League. That's what he said he's come here to do, and he's obviously succeeded. And I think it was the right time for him to leave and bring in another sort of solid centre half, because he's got better as he's gone on at the club. He's actually scored quite a few goals, you know. 4 or 5, I think.
Yeah, good. He's good at corner set pieces, isn't he?
Yeah, he is. But I think it was the right decision to let him go. And also with Michael Duckworth, he's obviously not left yet. He's been offered back. He's been offered to come back for pre-season. And 1 minute, season tickets have just been announced.
Apologies. You could actually announce them as we are live now if you would like to. But yeah, Michael Duckworth, he was a consistent performer at Halifax Town. What's the news with him?
He's picked up a couple of injuries during the season, quite injury prone, but he's the best right back we've got because he's the only right back we've got, I think.
Yeah.
And I'd like to see him stay for the season. For £300 for season tickets.
Slightly cheaper than FC Halifax Towns then. £300 for an adult season ticket. How much is it for your age group, 16, 17?
105.
So that's actually slightly more than
the prices have actually gone down now because there were £20 last season for adults. Now they're £13 per game.
So, that's good. Yeah, it's good. It's good to hear that York's prices have come out, and they seem to be quite reasonable for York City.
Actually
making the step up into the other league. Talking about making that step up into the National League, what are your expectations for next season?
It's early, but I have got a few expectations. But once we start signing players, I think we can make that more solid. Where we all think we're going to finish and stuff. Ask his recruitment. I trust him with that, and if he gets it right, I think we could be looking at mid-table, even top half, pushing for the top 7 maybe. I don't think we'll finish in the playoffs. I don't want to jinx her out. I hope we do, but I think it might take a couple of seasons for us to actually get going in the National League. But I am hoping we get I've actually done some predictions which I've not put out on social media for obvious reasons.
I won't ask you to announce them. I'm still debating where to put certain sides within the division, even my own club, because there isn't too much business going around within the Vanarama National League at the moment. So what away days are you looking forward to the best next season?
Obviously Halifax. It's a local derby, isn't it? And you've got to say you're looking forward to that one. There's obviously some big clubs in there, like Chesterfield, Wrexham, Notts County. I'm really looking forward to them. Trip to Wales. That sounds nice, isn't it? Have you been away to Wrexham before?
Oh yeah, I've been to more or less all the northern ones and quite a few of the southern ones. Wrexham. For any Wrexham fans who do listen to these podcasts, I think their plan is to make it very hostile for away fans. It's not the best to say Wrexham's facilities at this moment in time and how good, the pitches, the stadium, the investment they've had. They make it very hostile for away fans. You're crammed in a corner. I think there's poles in the way as well, so you can't actually see certain areas of the pitch. Wrexham fans, well, we know about Wrexham fans. They're loud and they like to make the away and not a very enjoyable experience. So, that's probably wouldn't be my favourite away day, Wrexham.
I've got to say, I'm no longer looking forward to Wrexham now. Thanks for that. Obviously, the going down south again to Dagenham and Bromley, we played them in the FA Trophy last year.
I've been to Dagenham. How did you find Dagenham away?
It was unreal. The first 90 minutes, quite dull, but the fans sung all the way through. We were losing for most of the match. Got to the 96th minute and we got awarded a penalty. Yeah, it was the best feeling. The best feeling in the world to get awarded a penalty like that. Clayton Dawson, I'm guessing you've seen it, the Panenka.
Yeah.
The little dinkies. He's really good at them. And then to go on to win on penalties, it was unreal. The best away.
Just an experience that you'll probably never have back. It's probably got to be one of the top ones supporting York, because obviously there has been quite a lot of down times being a York fan.
Yeah, just been a lot of lows and quite a few highs as well. For instance, winning the FA Trophy after relegation. But that Dagenham game, it's got to be up there somewhere. Even the Bromley game, semi-final, we lost, but it was still an incredible
experience. Took the lead, didn't you, in that game?
Yeah, we did. We were by far the better team in the first half, and it's just a case of not taking any chances that we lost it. And they've got some prolific strikers like James Lalarby and Michael Cheek, who they're going to put away chances, aren't they? You've probably seen Did they score against Halifax or not?
No, Bromley all season didn't score against Halifax. We took 4 points off them.
You kept them out.
A point away from home, a 0-0 draw and a 1-0 win at home. But yeah, talking about the away games, ones that I always look forward to, one that we have just lost that I'm quite depressed over the fact that we've lost at Grimsby Town away. That's one I'm sure as a York fan you probably were excited for. Chesterfield's always a good away day for Halifax fans. Notts County, just, you look at their stadium and how good it is. It's like playing. It feels like you're playing in the Championship when you go.
It looks like a Championship season. That's what I was going to say. And
Notts County, it's a class away day.
The thing is, I've not been to half of these away grounds in the National League because I've not been there for ages. I think I only started supporting the club in about 2015-16, and I've become attached since then. I've not been to places like Wrexham, Notts County, Chesterfield. Not even been to Halifax before. I don't think we've played you in ages, have we?
I think I know overall that most away supporters seem to like Halifax as an away day. Even your long distance supporters, there's plenty to do within Halifax. Yeah, Dagenham for me was a good away day too. There's a lot of good away days within there. I know I went to Southend away as a long distance one, and I really enjoyed that as an away day. Although we did lose 1-0, Dagenham was just class because we managed to win there. And because we were so close to the away fans, because I think we only took 200. So I think York were given the whole stand behind the goal. We were only given 200 because it was a league match. I think that more or less concludes it. Ryan, I do really appreciate you coming on. And yeah, best of luck for York next season. And I'm certainly looking forward to the derby.
Are indeed finally back. They are back. In the National League.
Apologies for that. That concludes my interview with Ryan Brook. I caught up with him earlier on in the week. For any York fans watching or general football fans of the National League, go give him a follow on Twitter at Ryan Brook. I will try and leave a link to his page in the description. Once again, Ryan, if you are watching, I do appreciate you coming on. Now, a slightly different story now within the Vanarama National League. A side that have never played in the National League before, competing for the first time this season. Side that have come out of nowhere. Dorking Wanderers FC. Yesterday, I caught up with Dorking fan Dan Stobbart to talk about what we are to expect from the Wanderers this season.
Nice football. Alfie Rutherford scores the Dorking. And it's another...
Dorking Wanderers. What a significant rise it has been for them over the past decade or so. And on tonight's edition of the Talking National League podcast, on this section, we are going to be talking a bit about Dorking's expectations and basically where they have come from over the past few years or so. Tonight, I've brought on Dan Stobbart, who works on the Twitter feed at Dorking, giving match updates on a Saturday and Tuesday night. Dan, how are you doing?
Hi, Luke. Yeah, not too bad, thanks. Thanks for having me on the podcast.
No problem whatsoever. So I think a congratulations in order, firstly, after you reached promotion to the National League by defeating Ebbsfleet in a magnificent fashion, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, unbelievable. Unbelievable end to the season. Could not have been more dramatic, really, in terms of, on the verge of losing it all, going 2-1 behind as we went into extra time, as we went into stoppage time, I should say. And then with virtually the last kick of the game, Luke Moore pulled it round 2-2 into extra time. And then with that momentum, Alfie Rutherford got us over the line 3-2. And here we are onto the National League Prem. Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah, it's just looking at the achievement that Dorking and the rise that they've had over the past couple of years. When you think of Dorking and where they've come from, something that I'm sure you've experienced as a fan and as working for Dorking too. What does it mean for you personally that they've reached the National League now?
Oh, I mean, it's just a phenomenal achievement, and really, just so proud for the football club in terms of the journey they've been on, and all the committee and the volunteers and the supporters. This campaign in particular, it's not always been easy at times. It's been quite injury hit at points in the campaign. Following on from the back of last year's disappointment, where they were top of the league, 5 points clear with a game in hand, and obviously curtailed early because of the COVID situation. And the first year in the National League South, they got to the playoffs. So as a culmination of all that, and through this campaign, we've had the best attendances at the football club, over four figures every week, and sellout crowds in the sort of back business end of the season, the latter part of the season. It's just absolutely amazing for the football club, and really just as desserts really, in terms of, in the end it was second versus third, and having finished runners up Dorking and taken on third place Ebbsfleet. They finished Wanderers finished the campaign with the top goal scorer in Alfie Rutherford. They scored 101 goals. And only Fulham scored more than that in the whole football pyramid. And they were top of the table for a good chunk of the season as well, and went 10 games unbeaten in the winter, and had a few months at the top of the league. So following on to all of that and all the hard work everyone's put in, fantastic achievement, and couldn't be more proud really. Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah, it's a great experience, and it's inspirational what Dorking have done over the past couple of years. When you think of sides that are currently at the bottom, starting from the bottom in the football pyramid, trying to make their way up. You've got to think of it, Dorking are only one division now off the Football League, which is a magnificent achievement, isn't it?
Oh, phenomenal, really. I mean, Mark White, who's the owner and the current owner, the manager of the football club, he started it with a bunch of mates in 1999. Could not have started any lower on the pyramid, the bottom end of it, Division 5 in the Sussex Park League, and here we are. This British record number of promotions, 12 promotions in 21 completed seasons, right through to, as you say, on the verge now of potentially the Football League. So it's unbelievable, and he's gone about it in such a consistent manner. The style of play, possession based, fast attacking football. Always keeping a core group of and a spine of players within the team as well. I mean, some of the guys several of the players in the team and the squad currently were there in the Isthmin days of Step 3 and Step 4 in non-league as well, and to have gone from Brockham Big Field, where they started playing out, this rent a pitch every week, through to West Humble, through to where we are now at Meadowbank. This fantastic setup. Just outside the city centre of Dorking, and as I said, with sellout crowds and their best attendances ever, it's a phenomenal journey, phenomenal ride that they've been on, and long may it continue. Yeah,
certainly. Yeah, I want to talk a bit about the Dorking Ebbsfleet game. I've got it up here, just the whole game and the events that happened against Ebbsfleet. So obviously Ebbsfleet took the lead late on in the game, and I think as a Dorking supporter and the whole Dorking club were probably thinking, oh, it's another season within the National League South. How hard done by we've been to over the past couple of years when you think of them in the National League South with COVID, etc. And then out of nowhere, Dorking managed to get an equaliser and then go on to win in extra time. Magical, isn't it? Especially when you think of Ebbsfleet, the time that Ebbsfleet scored the goal in the 90 plus 4th minute. So you think, usually there's no way back, but for a side like Dorking to come back, it shows courage, doesn't it?
Oh, it absolutely embodies the spirit within the club, and this DNA they've got, where they just do not give up and battle right to the end. And at that point, it got to a point at the end of the 90 minutes where it was 1-1. By Wanderers standards, they had been a bit flat, really. Ebbsfleet, by contrast, were sharp in attack and getting forward. So it's a tricky game, and I say one was quite flat really, but we got to this point where it was 1-1 into stoppage time, and Craig Tanner finishes the ball, finishes off in the penalty area to give Ebbsfleet that 2-1 lead, and you just right in front of their fans as well, and you're thinking, it's just not going to be our year this year, and you're already resigning yourself to what you're going to say on Twitter, and sort of start thinking about what's going to happen next year. But yeah, it never gave up, and with virtually the last kick in stoppage time, right at the end, this ball in from Barry Fuller, flicked on by Rutherford, and Luke Moore, who's been at the club fittingly, one of the players who's been at the club for a number of years, crashed the ball home at the back post, and 2-2, absolute limbs, absolute scenes in front of the main stands, and then that momentum really it went the other way. It would have drained Ebbsfleet, and that momentum powered us through extra time, and Alfie Rutherford, thankfully, a well worked goal, the ball cut back by Kane Wills at the byline, and Rutherford was there to tuck the ball home in the first half of extra time. So yeah, absolutely. Could not have done it in more dramatic fashion, and it'd come off the back of obviously having a really a more straightforward win over Oxford City in the semis as well. And a few days before that, they'd won the Surrey Senior Cup, and Dorking as well, beat Kingstonian on penalties.
Dorking then, back in the National League. What are your expectations for next season now? Would it be to just try to sustain yourself in the National League long term? Or would it be just to enjoy this experience and just enjoy it while it lasts? I think what you're saying, like other sides, I've like the Kings Lynn's, I've like the Weymouths, have you come up with not too many expectations? What would your expectations be, being a Dorking fan?
I mean, yeah, it's going to be fascinating to see how it pans out, because they are going into the division as a part-time side, Dorking, and obviously the division they're all full-time, and they've all been full-time for a sizable period, all these clubs. So it's going to be fascinating to see how they adapt. But certainly they'll be looking to be competitive, absolutely. And see if they can finish as high as they possibly can, and they've got every confidence to do that. In terms of the recent record against some Step 1 teams in the FA Trophy over the last few years has been really good. Defeated the likes of Bromley and Stockport, which is a really memorable night away at their ground, and beat Barnet last in the season before last. And then even this year, unfortunate, just narrowly defeated by Southend United away from home. So they've already demonstrated in the last few years they can hold their own against these Step 1 sides. And I know Mark, as the manager, will certainly be looking to be a really competitive campaign again. And then they certainly won't compromise on the style of play. They'll very much look to do it the way they've always done it. And hopefully it'll be a successful first season. And of course, in with some of the expectations taken off, because it is the first season at this level, it'll be a joyride for the supporters as well. Loads of new grounds, of course, and some massive names in the division, as we know. So, a competitive season, but certainly one where the expectations can be managed a bit, and then see how far we can go.
How significant could Alfie Rusherford be next season, scoring 29 goals for Dorking last season?
Well, Alfie remaining with the football club is massive, really. He signed a 2.5-year deal back in January. Finished the season as the division's top scorer with 32 goals in the end, if you include the playoff games. Got 5 hat-tricks through the course of the campaign as well. So an unbelievable personal season for him. And he had to step up this season as well, because his strike partner, Jason Pryor, who's been with the club for a few seasons, has had an injury-riddled campaign, really. And after getting back into the team and playing well in December, then broke his collarbone, and that sort of ruled him out until the very end of the campaign. So Alfie had to step up in his absence, and he absolutely did that. And a real dynamic forward, still very young as well. He's 23 years old, and he'll be chomping at the bit to have another go at some Step 1, because he had been with Havant and Waterlooville in the season they came up a few seasons back as well. And he's looking forward to see what he can do again next season. But massive for the football club that he's on board. Yeah.
The new other star men that are still with Dorking who could cause a threat next season for opposition.
Yeah, they haven't. Unfortunately, I mentioned Jason Pryor there. He has now moved on. He's actually gone back to Havant and Waterlooville due to logistics, obviously, and commitments outside of football. And it's the same story for Wes Fogden as well. Actually, who's left the club. He's gone to join Poole Town. Really industrious midfield player, but again, logistics sort of forced his hand there. And but in terms of but fortunately, the club have been able to retain, by sticking with the part-time model going into next year. They have kept a lot of that core group together, and a lot of the kind of key players still on board. Josh Taylor in central midfield had a fantastic campaign, and he'll very much be playing a part again next season. They just signed, just agreed a new 2-year deal with Matt Briggs, who's been a really key figure for several years at the football club, and this lightning fast winger, wing back player who has demonstrated, particularly for this season, before he unfortunately got injured towards the end of the campaign, this fantastic consistency with getting forward and just beating players for pace, and a great end product as well. And so he'll be, when he comes back from injury, I think unfortunately it'll be a few months till we see him in action, but he'll be another massive player for the football club as well. And they've managed to bring in a triple. They've managed to bring in 3 players as well so far, and in 3 of the top players from the National League South last season. Jack Jebb, technically gifted set piece specialist, sort of deep lying central midfield player. He's joined the club from Dartford, and he previously came for the Arsenal Academy in his youth, and he's had experience playing in the Football League and the National League Prem. So he'll come in and fit in really well to the style of play that Wanderers have got. They've also brought in Adam Meckie from Ebbsfleet, who's released from Ebbsfleet, and he's been with competed at the top end of the National League, playing with Tranmere and Bromley in past campaigns. So he's a skillful winger. They've also brought in Ryan Seeger, who in the last couple of years at Hungerford Town has finished top. Well, he finished in the season which was curtailed last year. He was the top scorer for the division, and then this past season he was second to Rutherford in the overall standings. So he's a player of real pedigree. Dynamic striker from Hungerford who's joined as well. So yeah, some really exciting additions, despite losing a couple of the key names as well.
Yeah, and there seems to be quite a big growth off the field as well, with attendances, like you mentioned earlier, record attendances for the playoff final in Dorking's history. The average attendance, I believe, was the highest in Dorking's history last season. 1,300 on average for Dorking, which is quite praising, isn't it, when you think of Dorking and how they've grown from literally the bottom of the football system to where they are now. Could we see that being even higher next season, heading into the National League? Seems to be all positive, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And yeah, no, the attendances through the course of the campaign, and obviously all clubs were affected by COVID. I think that slowed momentum down for all clubs. But as the season's gone on, the attendances have been at an all-time high at the club, and yeah, we can only expect that to continue and improve as we welcome these bigger clubs next season, of course. And in terms of you can't not mention the impact that the Bunch of Amateurs documentary series has had on the football club as well. Fantastic documentary series that Rich and his team have put together since the club came into National League South, and it's been compelling viewing, sort of warts and all documentary series. It's really expanded the appeal of the football club. But from market town Dorking, and that's had such a fast ascent through the divisions, it's remarkable, really, and long may it continue. And certainly the attractive brand of football, and some of the stories, and with the personnel and guys who've been with the football club for a long time, and Mark's story as well, of course, it makes it continually endearing. And going up another level next season, that can only improve further and continue to grow.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, I think it's time that I'll ask you, what away days are you going to be looking forward to then next season?
Well, I think on sort of both ends of it, really. On a local level, we've got a couple of fantastic games in terms of Woking, who obviously also the other side in Surrey that are in National League Premier. So that'll make for a couple of really exciting games home and away on a local level. And we've got Aldershot Town, who are just down the road as well. So a couple of really good local games to look forward to there, which is brilliant. But of course, you look at some of the, you look at the Oldham and Scunthorpe. Remarkable, the thought of playing them, with their tenure in the Football League and everything. The amazing couple of away days to look forward to there. And of course, you've got the likes of Wrexham as well, Notts County, Chesterfield, these massive football club, massive names. So at both ends of it, on a local level and further afield, some massive, fantastic games to look forward to next year for sure.
I'll give you some advice on the northern away days. Halifax seems to be running quite high demand when fans have come on away trips. Seems to be quite a popular one due to the infrastructure with alcohol and the amount of pubs around Halifax. However, from my personal experiences of Wrexham away, it's not the most pleasantest because they don't really give anything about the away fans. But yeah, there's some cracking away games within the Vanarama National League, and I'm sure yourself and Dorking will enjoy that. Finally, what would be a suitable position for you personally next season for Dorking to finish?
Oh, it's a tough one because I think there's this kind of unknown sort of entity to it as we talked about earlier with adapting and stepping up. But certainly, I think to be competitive, I sort of compare it maybe to the first season in the National League South, where it was this idea of, well, let's be competitive first, and certainly mix it with the better teams in the division, and just see how high we can go. But certainly, I know that Mark and the club and what they're all about, they'll be looking to really mix up with the big teams in the division, and certainly not be there just to make up the numbers. So certainly, top half and looking up would be a fantastic sort of world to be in. But to certainly be competitive in this first season is the key, really. And as they acclimatise and adapt and get used to the step up, yeah.
Mm-hmm, yeah, Dan, I really appreciate you coming on. That concludes our interview with Dan Stobbart. If you'd like to go and follow him on Twitter, I'm sure he would much appreciate that. If there are any Dorking fans watching who haven't come across his content yet, I would go and give him a follow then. That also more or less concludes tonight's edition of the Talking National League podcast. Cheers to everybody who has tuned in tonight and all the guests who have come on the podcast this week. Obviously, as you know, we will be live next week for our third edition of the Talking National League podcast. You guys who are watching now, you are basically watching, and you are the first viewers that we are getting on the podcasts, and hopefully we can grow on a weekly basis. We've already seen over this episode increase from last week's edition of the Talking National League podcast, the views. We managed to get 500 views on last week's podcast. Hopefully we can beat that again or better that this week. Yeah, cheers to everyone that's tuned in tonight. Remember to go and give our partners at Non-League Bible a follow on Twitter, Instagram and Facebook. And for now, I will see you guys next time. Thank you.